The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clanged against the concrete driveway at exactly 11:47 p.m. I was lying under my beat-up Ford pickup, trying to fix a transmission leak that had been dripping oil onto our pristine suburban driveway for weeks. That's when I heard Veronica's voice drifting through the cracked kitchen window above me. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Don't worry about Brandon, she was saying, her tone low and intimate in a way I hadn't heard directed at me in years. He's extra weight. I'll dump him soon enough. Extra weight? I bench-pressed more than her boyfriend's IQ, assuming he had one. I stayed perfectly still under the truck, oil dripping onto my forehead as I listened to my wife of 18 years casually discuss disposing of me like yesterday's garbage. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, literally underneath something, while she talked about how beneath her I was. Ethan, you know I love you, Veronica continued. Once the divorce is final, we can be together properly. No more sneaking around. Ethan Drake. I should have known. The slick board member at Veronica's tech company, Technova Solutions, where she'd clawed her way up to CEO over the past 5 years. The guy drove a Tesla, wore $1,000 suits, and had the kind of perfectly styled hair that screamed, I've never done an honest day's work in my life. What about Brandon's job? Ethan's voice was barely audible through the phone speaker, but I caught it. Won't firing him cause problems? Veronica laughed, a cold, calculated sound that made me freeze. He's head of cybersecurity, but honestly, any college kid could do what he does. I've been looking for an excuse to get rid of him anyway. Mixing business with personal life was always messy. Messy. That's what our marriage had become to her. Messy. I'd started at Technova 3 years ago when Veronica recommended me for the position. Back then, I thought she was being supportive of my career change from construction work to IT. I'd spent 2 years getting certified, studying nights after 10-hour days, pouring concrete and framing houses. My hands were still calloused from years of manual labor, and I felt like an imposter in the sterile corporate environment, but I was good at cybersecurity. Really good. Apparently none of that mattered now. I have to go, Veronica said. He'll be coming in soon, and I need to look like the devoted wife for a little longer. The call ended, and I heard her footsteps moving away from the kitchen window. I remained under the truck for another 10 minutes, staring up at the rusted undercarriage and thinking about how perfectly it represented my life. Everything looked fine from the outside, but underneath, it was all falling apart. When I finally rolled out from under the truck, my work clothes were soaked with oil, and my mind was crystal clear for the first time in months. All those late nights Veronica claimed to be working, all those business trips, all those times she'd been too tired or too stressed for any intimacy, it all made sense now. I walked into our house through the garage, past Veronica's pristine BMW sitting in its designated spot. The contrast between our vehicles said everything about our marriage. Hers was sleek, expensive, and always spotless. Mine was functional, beaten up, and constantly leaking something. How's the truck? Veronica asked from the living room, not looking up from her laptop. She was sitting on our white leather couch, her choice, of course, wearing silk pajamas that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Still broken, I said, which was true in more ways than one. Just like everything else around here. She glanced up then, her ice blue eyes studying my face for any sign that I'd overheard her conversation. Veronica was nothing if not perceptive. It's what made her such a successful CEO and, apparently, such an effective cheater. You look upset, she said carefully. Just tired. Long day. Maybe you should consider a different career, she said, turning back to her laptop. Something less stressful. The audacity was breathtaking. She was planning to fire me and divorce me, and now she was giving me career advice. Maybe I should, I agreed. Sometimes a man's got to know when it's time for a change. Over the next week, I began what I privately called operation documentation. My years in construction had taught me that you always document everything, and my cybersecurity training had shown me exactly how to do it digitally. Veronica was sloppy with her digital security, which was ironic considering she ran a tech company. She used the same password for multiple accounts, left her laptop unlocked when she went to shower, and never bothered to properly delete files from her phone. It took me 3 days to find the deleted text messages between her and Ethan. They'd been seeing each other for 8 months, meeting at the downtown Marriott every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. The messages were explicit enough to make me want to throw her phone against the wall, but I controlled myself. Evidence was more valuable than satisfaction. By Friday, I had screenshots of everything, text messages, email drafts she'd never sent, hotel receipts charged to her company credit card, and even a short video message she'd recorded for Ethan while I was at my boxing gym. "You're all I think about," she'd said in the video, wearing lingerie I'd never seen before. "I can't wait until we don't have to hide anymore." The boxing gym. That was my sanctuary, the one place where I wasn't Veronica's husband or Technova's cybersecurity guy. I was just Brandon, the former construction worker who could still throw a decent punch and take one even better. Ricky Sting Alvarez owned the gym. He was a former middleweight who'd fought professionally in the 80s and 90s before opening the gym in a converted warehouse downtown. The place smelled like sweat, old leather, and honest work. Everything my marriage wasn't. "You look like someone stole your lunch money," Ricky said when I walked in that Friday evening. He was wrapping his hands, getting ready for his own workout, despite being 50 years old and having arthritis in both shoulders. "Worse," I said, pulling on my gloves. "Someone stole my life." I told Ricky everything while we worked the heavy bag. He listened without judgment, occasionally nodding or grunting when I landed a particularly solid punch. "So what's your plan?" he asked when I finished. "I don't know yet. Part of me wants to confront them directly, but that's probably what she's expecting." "Revenge is a dish best served cold," Ricky said, "but it's also best served with an airtight alibi and a clear head." That night, I made my decision. If Veronica wanted a villain, I'd give her one, but I'd be the kind of villain who never got caught. Saturday morning, I followed Ethan's Tesla to the Stardust Motel on the outskirts of town. It was exactly the kind of sleazy place you'd expect for an affair. Hourly rates, neon signs with half the letters burned out, and a parking lot full of potholes. I waited in my truck until I saw Veronica's BMW pull up. She was wearing dark sunglasses and a baseball cap, like she was going incognito. It might have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. They went into room 237. I gave them 30 minutes to get comfortable, then I got to work. Ethan's Tesla was parked directly under a broken streetlight, which made my job easier. I used my utility knife to slash both front tires, not enough to cause an accident, but enough to strand them. Then I found the exhaust pipe and used a can of expanding foam insulation from my truck to fill it completely. For the finishing touch, I left a note under his windshield wiper. "Enjoy your ride, Romeo." A concerned citizen. I was back in my truck and halfway home when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, it was a video file showing me vandalizing Ethan's car, clearly filmed from across the parking lot. The timestamp showed it was recorded just 20 minutes ago. The message that came with it was simple. "Interesting hobby you've picked up, Brandon." A friend. Someone had been watching me watch them. Someone who knew my name and had my phone number. Someone who was now in possession of evidence that could destroy me. I pulled over to the side of the road and watched the video 3 more times. The quality was good enough to identify me clearly, and the angle suggested it had been filmed from the motel office or a room with a direct view of the parking lot. My phone buzzed again. Another message from the same unknown number. "Check your email." The email contained a single line. "Your wife will have this video in 1 hour unless you call this number." This was no longer about catching Veronica in an affair. Someone else was playing a game I didn't understand, and I was apparently one of the pieces. I dialed the number. "Hello, Brandon," said a female voice I didn't recognize. "I think it's time we had a conversation." "Who is this?" I asked, gripping the phone so hard I thought I might crack the screen. "Someone who's been watching your marriage fall apart with great interest," the woman said. Her voice was smooth, educated, with just a hint of satisfaction that made my skin crawl. "Meet me at Ricky's gym in 1 hour. Come alone, and don't tell anyone about this call." "Why should I?" "Because if you don't, that video goes to your wife, your employer, and the police. Vandalism is still a crime, Brandon, even when you're the wronged party." The line went silent. I sat in my truck on the side of the road for 10 minutes, trying to process what had just happened. Someone had been watching me, probably for longer than just tonight. Someone who knew about Ricky's gym, about my marriage, about everything. The drive to the gym felt like it took hours instead of the usual 20 minutes. My mind raced through possibilities. A private investigator hired by Veronica, one of Ethan's friends, a blackmailer who'd stumbled onto a gold mine of suburban drama. Ricky's gym was officially closed on Saturday evenings, but I had a key. The building was dark, except for the emergency lighting, casting long shadows between the heavy bags and workout equipment. She was waiting for me in the ring, sitting casually on the middle rope like she owned the place. Even in the dim lighting, I could see she was attractive. Probably in her early 40s, with auburn hair pulled back in a ponytail and the kind of athletic build that suggested she actually used gyms for their intended purpose. "You're punctual," she said, hopping down from the ropes with surprising grace. I like that in a man. Who are you? Tina McAllister, she said, extending a manicured hand. I'm the PR director at Technova Solutions. We've met before, actually, but you probably don't remember me. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Tina McAllister. Veronica's best friend since college, the woman who'd been maid of honor at our wedding, the woman who'd been to our house for dinner dozens of times over the years. I remember you, I said slowly. You're the one who convinced Veronica to hire me. Guilty as charged. Tina smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes, though I had ulterior motives for that recommendation. Which were? Revenge, she said simply. You destroyed my career once, Brandon. I've been waiting 3 years for the perfect opportunity to return the favor. I stared at her, trying to make sense of what she was saying. I've never done anything to you. Haven't you? Tina pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. It was a screenshot of an email I'd sent 3 years ago, back when I was still doing construction work. Remember the Riverside Plaza project? The memory came flooding back. Riverside Plaza was a mixed-use development downtown, condos, retail space, and offices. I'd been the job foreman, and we'd been hired to do the concrete work. The project had been a disaster from the start, plagued by cost overruns, design changes, and corner cutting by the developers. You were the PR consultant, I said, the pieces falling into place. I was the PR consultant who got fired when you sent this email to the City Planning Commission, Tina said, detailing all the safety violations, the substandard materials, the bribes being paid to inspectors. Very thorough, very damaging. I remembered that email. I'd sent it because people were going to live and work in that building, and the developers were cutting so many corners that someone was going to get hurt. The project had been shut down for 6 months while everything was investigated and rebuilt to code. I did the right thing, I said. You destroyed a $50 million project and took down half the development company with it, Tina replied, including me. I lost my job, my reputation, and my fiancé left me because he couldn't handle being associated with the scandal. So you've been planning this for 3 years? Not planning exactly, waiting. When Veronica mentioned she was looking for a cybersecurity expert, I remembered your name from the Riverside mess. I did some research and discovered you'd retrained in IT. It was too perfect an opportunity to pass up. I felt sick. You manipulated Veronica into hiring me just so you could destroy me? Oh, Brandon, Tina laughed. I didn't manipulate Veronica into anything. She hired you because you were qualified and because she thought it would be convenient to have her husband working at the same company. The affair with Ethan? That was all her idea. But you encouraged it. I facilitated it, Tina corrected. There's a difference. Veronica was already unhappy in your marriage, feeling trapped, bored, resentful that she'd outgrown you professionally. Ethan was already interested in her. I just made sure they had opportunities to act on their mutual attraction. The pieces were falling into place now, and the picture they formed made me want to hit something. The business trips, the late meetings, you arranged those? I arranged some of them. Veronica arranged others. Once the affair started, it took on a life of its own. All I had to do was sit back and wait for the inevitable explosion. And tonight? Tonight was supposed to be the beginning of the end for you, Tina said. Veronica's planning to serve you with divorce papers at the company Christmas party next week. She's going to fire you publicly, humiliate you in front of all your colleagues, and then announce her engagement to Ethan. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. Why are you telling me this? Because I've changed my mind about how I want this to play out, Tina said. Watching you get destroyed passively was satisfying, but I think I'd prefer a more active role in your downfall. She pulled out a tablet and showed me a series of photos, me following Ethan's car, me slashing his tires, me filling his exhaust pipe with foam. The photos were time-stamped and GPS tagged. I've been having you followed for the past month, she said. Ever since Veronica started talking about the divorce. I wanted to document everything, your reaction to discovering the affair, your attempts at revenge, your inevitable breakdown. For what purpose? Insurance, Tina said, and entertainment. But now I'm thinking we might be able to help each other. Help each other how? You want revenge on Veronica and Ethan. I want to see you suffer, but I also want to see them suffer. We can accomplish both goals if we work together. I stared at her, trying to understand the logic. You want to help me get revenge on your best friend? Veronica stopped being my friend the moment she started treating me like her employee, Tina said, and for the first time, I heard real emotion in her voice. Do you know what it's like to watch someone you care about turn into a monster? To have them order you around, dismiss your ideas, take credit for your work? So this isn't really about me at all. Oh, it's definitely about you, Tina said, but it's also about Veronica and Ethan and everyone else who thinks they're untouchable because they have money and power. I looked around the gym, at the punching bags and workout equipment that represented honest sweat and effort, then back at Tina, who represented manipulation and calculated revenge. What exactly are you proposing? A partnership, she said. You have access to Technova's computer systems. I have access to information about Veronica and Ethan that could destroy them both. Together, we can orchestrate a downfall that will be remembered for years. And what do you get out of it? The satisfaction of watching everyone who wronged me get exactly what they deserve, Tina said. Plus, I'll make sure you don't go down alone. When this is over, Veronica and Ethan will be just as destroyed as you are. I thought about Veronica's voice on the phone, calling me extra weight. I thought about Ethan's smug face and expensive suits. I thought about the humiliation they were planning for me at the Christmas party. What did you have in mind? Tina smiled, and this time it did reach her eyes. Say, how familiar are you with Technova's client database? Very familiar, I said, though every instinct I'd developed over 43 years of life was screaming at me to walk away from whatever Tina was proposing. Good, she said, pulling up a chair, because Technova has some very interesting clients. Government contracts, healthcare systems, financial institutions, the kind of clients who take data security very seriously. I knew where this was heading, and I didn't like it. I'm not going to help you hack into client systems. I'm not asking you to hack anything, Tina said. I'm asking you to document security vulnerabilities that already exist, vulnerabilities that Veronica has been ignoring because fixing them would be expensive and time-consuming. That caught my attention. What vulnerabilities? Tina opened her tablet and showed me a series of emails. They were from me to Veronica, sent over the past 18 months, detailing various security issues I'd discovered in Technova's systems. Outdated encryption protocols, unpatched software, weak password requirements, insufficient access controls. I've been forwarding your security reports to myself, Tina said. Veronica's been ignoring most of your recommendations because implementing them would require significant investment and might slow down development timelines. I remembered those reports. I'd spent weeks researching and documenting each vulnerability, writing detailed explanations of the risks and recommended solutions. Veronica had acknowledged receiving them, but had never approved the budget for fixes. So, what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that if these vulnerabilities were to be discovered by the wrong people, say a regulatory audit or a security researcher, it could be very embarrassing for Technova and very damaging to Veronica's reputation. That's still my company too, I pointed out. If Technova goes down, I lose my job and my reputation along with everyone else. Not if you're the whistleblower who tried to prevent the problems, Tina said. Not if you have documented evidence that you repeatedly warned management about these issues and were ignored. I had to admit, it was elegant. Use my own legitimate security concerns as weapons against the people who'd ignored them. Turn my professional diligence into their professional downfall. Well, what about Ethan specifically? Ethan has been using his board position to steer contracts to companies he has financial interests in, Tina said. It's not technically illegal, but it's definitely unethical and probably violates his fiduciary duty to Technova shareholders. How do you know that? Because I've been documenting it for months, Tina said. I handle PR for the company, which means I see all the contract announcements, press releases, and board meeting minutes. I also have access to public records showing Ethan's business investments. She showed me a spreadsheet on her tablet. It detailed a pattern of Technova contracts being awarded to companies that Ethan had invested in, often at above market rates and with unusually favorable terms. This is actually impressive detective work, I said. Thank you. I minored in investigative journalism in college before I decided PR paid better. I studied the spreadsheet more carefully. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for, but subtle enough that it had gone unnoticed by the other board members. So, your plan is to expose both the security vulnerabilities and the contract steering? My plan is to orchestrate a perfect storm, Tina said. Multiple scandals breaking simultaneously, each one reinforcing the others. Veronica looks incompetent for ignoring security issues. Ethan looks corrupt for steering contracts. The company's reputation is destroyed, stock price crashes, and both of them are forced out in disgrace. And I emerge as the conscientious employee who tried to prevent all of this? Exactly. You'll probably be able to find a better job with a company that actually values cybersecurity expertise. It was tempting, more than tempting. But there was something about Tina's enthusiasm that bothered me. What's the real reason you're doing this? I asked. And don't give me another speech about revenge for Riverside Plaza. That was 3 years ago, and you've had plenty of opportunities for payback since then. Tina's smile faded. You really want to know? I really want to know. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the boxing ring like she was seeing something I couldn't. Veronica and I were roommates in college, she said finally. Best friends, sorority sisters, each other's maid of honor. When she started her climb up the corporate ladder, she brought me along. We were going to conquer the business world together. What changed? Success changed her. Or maybe it just revealed who she really was underneath. The higher she climbed, the more ruthless she became. She started seeing other people as tools to be used rather than friends to be valued. Including you. Especially me. I became her personal PR machine, cleaning up her messes, spinning her mistakes, making her look good while she made me look expendable. Tina's voice was getting harder, more bitter. Do you know what it's like to watch your best friend turn into someone you don't recognize? To have them treat you like hired help while still expecting you to be loyal and supportive? So this is about Veronica, not me. This is about all of us, Tina said. Veronica, Ethan, you, me. We're all trapped in this toxic web of ambition and betrayal and hurt feelings. The only way out is to burn it all down and start over. I looked at her carefully. You're not planning to start over, are you? You're planning to watch everyone else burn. Maybe, she said. Would that bother you? The honest answer was no, it wouldn't bother me. Not anymore. Veronica had made it clear that I was disposable. Ethan had made it clear that he saw me as an obstacle to be removed. If Tina wanted to destroy them both, I was increasingly inclined to help her do it. What do you need from me? Access to the Technova servers, she said. Specifically, I need you to run a comprehensive security audit and document every vulnerability you find. Make it official, put it in writing, send it to the board of directors. That's actually part of my job description. I know, that's what makes it perfect. You'll just be doing your job very thoroughly and very publicly. And then? And then I'll make sure the right people see your report. Regulatory agencies, industry journalists, cybersecurity researchers, Technova's biggest clients. I thought about it. A comprehensive security audit would take weeks to complete properly, and the results would likely be damaging to the company's reputation. But if the vulnerabilities were real, and I knew they were, then documenting them was the right thing to do, regardless of the consequences. There's one condition, I said. What's that? I want to be there when Veronica finds out. I want to see her face when she realizes what's happening. Tina's smile returned, cold and predatory. Oh, Brandon, I was hoping you'd say that. We spent the next hour going over details. Tina had been planning this for months, and her preparation was thorough. She had contact lists for journalists, regulatory officials, and cybersecurity experts. She had documented timelines showing when I'd first reported each vulnerability and when management had failed to act. She even had a draft press release ready to go. You've really thought of everything, I said. I've had a lot of time to think, she replied, and a lot of motivation. When we finished planning, I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff. Once I started the security audit, there would be no going back. Technova would be destroyed, Veronica and Ethan would be ruined, and I'd be complicit in all of it. Second thoughts? Tina asked, reading my expression. Just making sure I understand the stakes, I said. Once we do this, everyone gets hurt. The company, the employees, the shareholders, everyone. Everyone's already getting hurt, Tina pointed out. The difference is that now the people causing the damage will finally face consequences. She was right. Veronica and Ethan were already planning to destroy me. The security vulnerabilities were already putting client data at risk. The contract steering was already costing Technova money and credibility. All we were doing was making sure the truth came to light. When do we start? I asked. Monday morning, Tina said. I'll send you an official request for a comprehensive security audit, copying the entire board of directors. You'll have no choice but to comply. And Veronica? Veronica will try to stop you, of course. She'll realize that a thorough audit will expose all the problems she's been ignoring. But it'll be too late. Once the board requests an audit, she can't refuse without looking like she has something to hide. I stood up to leave, then turned back. What happens to us after this is over? What do you mean? I mean, you're destroying your own career along with everyone else's. Technova goes down, you go down with it. Tina shrugged. I've been planning my exit strategy for months. I have enough saved to take some time off, and my reputation in PR is solid enough that I'll find something else eventually. And me? You'll be fine, she said. Whistleblowers who expose corporate malfeasance usually land on their feet, especially in cybersecurity. Companies want to hire people with integrity. I wanted to believe her, but something in her tone suggested she wasn't telling me everything. There was a piece of this puzzle I was still missing, something that would explain why she was willing to destroy her own career for revenge. but I was too angry and too tired to care about the missing pieces. Veronica wanted to treat me like extra weight? Fine. I'd show her what extra weight could do when it finally decided to fight back. I'll see you Monday morning, I said. See you Monday, Brandon. This is going to be fun. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, matching my mood perfectly. I'd spent the weekend going through the motions of normal married life, grocery shopping with Veronica, watching football, making small talk about work, all while knowing that everything was about to explode. Veronica seemed unusually cheerful, humming while she made coffee and actually kissing me goodbye before leaving for work. The kiss felt like Judas betraying Christ, but I played my part. Have a good day, honey, she said. Oh, I will, I replied, and meant every word. I arrived at Technova 30 minutes early and went straight to my office on the 3rd floor. The cybersecurity department was small, just me and 2 junior analysts, but our responsibilities covered the entire company's digital infrastructure. At exactly 9 a.m., my computer chimed with a new email. It was from Tina McAllister, copied to the entire board of directors, with the subject line, Request for Comprehensive Security Audit. The email was professionally worded and completely reasonable. Technova was bidding on several large government contracts that required detailed security certifications. A comprehensive audit would be necessary to meet compliance requirements. The board was requesting that I complete the audit within 2 weeks and present my findings at the next board meeting. It was perfect. Completely legitimate, impossible to refuse, and guaranteed to uncover every security vulnerability I'd been warning about for months. My phone rang within 5 minutes. Brandon, what the hell is this audit request about? Veronica's voice was sharp with irritation. Exactly what it says, I replied calmly. The board wants a comprehensive security audit for the government contract bids. We don't have time for this right now. Can't you just write a summary report saying everything's fine? That would be lying, I said. And it would be illegal if we're submitting it for government contracts. There was a pause. I could practically hear Veronica's mind racing, trying to find a way out of this without looking incompetent in front of the board. How long will this take? She asked finally. 2 weeks, minimum. Maybe longer if I find significant issues that need detailed documentation. Fine, she said through gritted teeth. But I want daily progress reports, and I want to review everything before it goes to the board. Of course, I said, though we both knew she wouldn't understand most of the technical details. I spent the morning setting up automated security scans on all of Technova's systems. The results were worse than I'd expected. We had servers running software that hadn't been updated in over a year, database passwords that hadn't been changed since the systems were installed, encryption protocols that were considered obsolete by current standards. By lunchtime, I had enough material to write a damning report, and I'd barely scratched the surface. How's the audit going? Asked Jennifer Walsh, one of my junior analysts. Like an autopsy, I replied. Every time I look deeper, I find something else that's gone. Jennifer laughed, not realizing how literal I was being. Technova's security infrastructure was a corpse held together by luck and prayers. That afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor. Ethan Drake knocked on my office door, wearing his usual $1,000 suit and practiced smile. Brandon, good to see you, he said, settling into the chair across from my desk without being invited. I wanted to talk to you about this security audit. What about it? Well, I'm concerned that it might be overly thorough, Ethan said carefully. We don't want to create problems where none exist, you know? I leaned back in my chair and studied his face. Are you asking me to falsify my findings? Of course not, Ethan said quickly. I'm just suggesting that maybe we focus on the big picture rather than getting bogged down in technical minutia. The technical minutia is what keeps hackers out of our systems, I said. It's also what government auditors will be looking for. Ethan's smile became strained. I understand that, but we also need to consider the company's reputation. If this audit makes us look incompetent, it could damage our ability to win contracts. If our security is actually incompetent, then maybe we shouldn't win those contracts. The smile disappeared entirely. Brandon, I hope you're not going to let personal issues affect your professional judgment. There it was, the threat delivered with corporate politeness but unmistakably clear. What personal issues would those be? I asked. I think you know, Ethan said, standing up. Just remember that your job here depends on being a team player. After he left, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about what had just happened. Ethan was worried enough about the audit to personally threaten me. That meant the security vulnerabilities were even worse than I'd thought, and the consequences of exposing them would be more severe. Good. I worked late that night, long after most of the office had emptied out. The building was quiet except for the hum of servers and the occasional sound of the cleaning crew moving through the halls. Around 10 p.m., I heard footsteps approaching my office. I looked up to see Tina McAllister standing in my doorway. "Burning the midnight oil?" she asked. "The audit is turning up some interesting findings," I said. "Want to see?" Tina closed the door behind her and came around to look at my computer screen. I showed her the preliminary results. Dozens of critical vulnerabilities, outdated systems, inadequate access controls. "This is worse than I expected," she said. "It gets worse. I found evidence that several of these vulnerabilities have already been exploited." Tina's eyes widened. "Exploited how?" "Someone's been accessing client databases without authorization. The logs show dozens of unauthorized queries over the past 6 months, all traced back to administrative accounts. Do you know who?" I pulled up another screen showing the access logs. "The queries are coming from Ethan's login credentials." "He's been stealing client data?" "He's been accessing it anyway. What he's doing with it, I can't tell from the logs alone." Tina stared at the screen, and I could see her mind working. "This changes everything," she said finally. "How so?" "If Ethan's been stealing client data, that's not just unethical, it's criminal. We're talking about potential federal charges, prison time, complete destruction of his life." I felt a cold satisfaction settling in my chest. "Good. Brandon," Tina said carefully, "if we expose this, Ethan doesn't just lose his job, he loses everything. His career, his freedom, probably his family. He should have thought about that before he decided to steal my wife and my job." Tina nodded slowly. "Okay. But we need to be smart about how we handle this. If we move too fast, he might be able to cover his tracks or claim the data access was authorized. What do you suggest?" "Let me do some more research into what he's been doing with the data. If we can prove he's been selling it or using it for insider trading, the case becomes airtight." I saved my work and started shutting down my computer. "How long do you need?" "A few days, maybe a week. Can you delay the audit report?" "I can stretch it out a little, but not too long. The board is expecting results." "That's fine. This is going to be worth the wait." As I drove home that night, I thought about how quickly things were escalating. What had started as a simple plan to expose security vulnerabilities was turning into something much bigger and more dangerous. Ethan wasn't just having an affair with my wife. He was potentially a criminal. Veronica wasn't just planning to divorce and humiliate me. She was potentially complicit in covering up his crimes. When I got home, Veronica was already in bed, reading on her tablet. "You're late," she said without looking up. "The audit is more complex than I expected," I said, which was true. "Find anything interesting?" I looked at her carefully, wondering how much she knew about Ethan's data access. "A few things that will need to be addressed. Nothing too serious, I hope." "That depends on your definition of serious." She finally looked up from her tablet. What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm doing my job thoroughly and professionally, just like you've always asked me to." Veronica studied my face for a moment, then went back to her reading. "Don't create problems where none exist, Brandon. This company is bigger than your ego." I went to brush my teeth, thinking about her words. She was right about one thing. Technova was bigger than my ego. It was also bigger than her ambition, bigger than Ethan's greed, and bigger than all of our personal drama. But sometimes big things fall down when their foundations are rotten, and I was about to prove just how rotten Technova's foundations really were. 2 weeks later, I was ready to present my findings to the board. The conference room on the 20th floor was Technova's crown jewel. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a mahogany table that probably cost more than most people's cars, and leather chairs that whispered corporate power. All 7 board members were present, along with Veronica and Tina. I'd prepared a presentation that was thorough, damning, and completely factual. Every finding was documented, every vulnerability was verified, and every recommendation was reasonable. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, "I'm here to present the results of the comprehensive security audit you requested 2 weeks ago. I'm afraid the findings are quite serious." I clicked to my first slide, which showed a summary of critical vulnerabilities. The room went very quiet. "We currently have 47 critical security vulnerabilities across our systems," I continued. "These include outdated encryption, unpatched software, weak password policies, and insufficient access controls. Any one of these vulnerabilities could result in a complete data breach." Board member Patricia Morrison raised her hand. "How long have these vulnerabilities existed?" "Most of them have been present for over a year. I've been documenting and reporting these issues in my monthly security reports, but the necessary fixes have not been implemented due to budget constraints." I saw Veronica's face go pale. She'd been ignoring my security reports for months, and now that negligence was being exposed to the entire board. The second major finding, I continued, involves unauthorized access to client databases. I clicked to the next slide showing the access logs I'd discovered. Over the past 6 months, someone has been using administrative credentials to access client data without authorization. The access patterns suggest systematic data harvesting rather than legitimate business use. Do we know who's responsible? Asked board member Robert Chen. I looked directly at Ethan. The unauthorized access is coming from board member Ethan Drake's login credentials. The room erupted. Ethan jumped to his feet, his face red with anger and panic. That's impossible, he shouted. I would never. My credentials must have been compromised. That's certainly possible, I said calmly. However, the access times correspond exactly with Mr. Drake's badge swipes into the building. Either his credentials were compromised by someone who perfectly mimicked his schedule, or he was personally responsible for the unauthorized access. Tina spoke up from her seat at the back of the room. There's additional information the board should be aware of. She stood and walked to the front of the room, carrying a thick folder. Over the past month, I've been investigating how the stolen client data was being used, she said. I've discovered that Mr. Drake has been selling confidential client information to competitors, using the proceeds to fund personal investments in companies that later received preferential treatment in Technova contract awards. She opened the folder and began distributing documents to the board members. Bank records, email communications, investment portfolios, a paper trail that painted a picture of systematic corruption. This is a lie, Ethan screamed. You're both lying. This is a setup. The evidence speaks for itself, Tina said coolly. Mr. Drake has stolen approximately $1.2 million worth of confidential data over the past 6 months. He's also steered roughly $8 million in contracts to companies he has financial interests in. Board Chairman William Foster looked like he was going to be sick. Ethan, please tell me this isn't true. Ethan looked around the room desperately, his eyes finally settling on Veronica. V, tell them this is crazy. Tell them I would never do something like this. All eyes turned to Veronica, who had been sitting in stunned silence. Her face was white as paper, and her hands were shaking. I don't know anything about this, she said weakly. Actually, Tina said, that's not entirely accurate. She pulled out another document and placed it in front of Veronica. This is an email you sent to Mr. Drake 3 months ago, explicitly authorizing him to access client databases for competitive research purposes. You were aware of his activities and gave them your approval. Veronica stared at the email, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. That was taken out of context. I didn't know he was selling the information. Perhaps not, Tina said, but you did know he was accessing confidential client data without proper authorization. You also knew about his financial interests in companies receiving Technova contracts because you signed off on several of those contracts personally. The room was silent, except for the sound of papers rustling as board members reviewed the evidence. I watched Veronica and Ethan's faces as the reality of their situation sank in. They weren't just facing professional embarrassment, they were facing potential criminal charges. Mr. Foster, I said, there's one more thing the board should know. I clicked to my final slide, which showed a timeline of my security reports and management's responses. I've been warning about these vulnerabilities for 18 months. Every month, I submitted detailed reports explaining the risks and recommending solutions. Every month, those reports were acknowledged but ignored. The security failures that enabled Mr. Drake's data theft were entirely preventable. Foster looked at Veronica with disgust. You've been ignoring security warnings for over a year. The fixes were expensive, Veronica said desperately. We were trying to control costs, focus on growth. You were trying to boost short-term profits at the expense of client security, Foster interrupted. Do you have any idea what this is going to cost us? The lawsuits, the regulatory fines, the loss of client trust? We can fix this, Veronica said. We can implement the security improvements, fire Ethan, put new policies in place. It's too late for that, Tina said. I've already contacted the FBI, the SEC, and the State Attorney General's office. They're opening formal investigations into both the data theft and the contract steering. I've also reached out to our major clients to inform them of the security breaches. The color drained from Veronica's face completely. You did what? I did my job, Tina said. My job is to protect Technova's reputation, and the only way to do that now is complete transparency and cooperation with law enforcement. Ethan suddenly bolted for the door, but Foster's voice stopped him cold. Ethan, if you leave this room, I'm calling security and having you arrested for trespassing. Sit down. Ethan sat down, his hands shaking. Here's what's going to happen, Foster said, his voice calm. Ethan, you're fired, effective immediately. Your access to all Technova systems is revoked, and you're banned from company property. Veronica, you're suspended pending the outcome of the investigations. If you're cleared of criminal wrongdoing, we'll discuss your future with the company. This is insane, Veronica said. I built this company, I made it profitable. One mistake doesn't erase years of success. One mistake? Foster's voice rose. You ignored critical security warnings for 18 months. You enabled systematic data theft. You've exposed this company to millions of dollars in liability. I was protecting shareholder value. You were protecting your own ego. Foster slammed his hand on the table. And now that ego has destroyed everything you claim to have built. I watched this exchange with a mixture of satisfaction and amazement. 3 weeks ago, Veronica had been planning to fire and humiliate me at the company Christmas party. Now she was facing potential criminal charges and professional ruin. Brandon, Foster said, turning to me, I want you to work directly with law enforcement and our legal team. Full cooperation, complete transparency. Can you do that? Absolutely, I said. Good. I also want you to oversee the implementation of all security improvements. Whatever budget you need, you'll have it. As the meeting broke up, board members filed out in small groups, whispering among themselves. Ethan left quickly, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Veronica sat at the table for several minutes, staring at the evidence of her downfall. Finally, she looked up at me. You planned this, she said quietly. I did my job, I replied, echoing Tina's words. This will destroy both of us, you know. If Technova goes under, we both lose everything. Maybe, I said, but at least I'll lose it honestly. Veronica stood up slowly, gathering the scattered papers in front of her. I hope your revenge was worth it, Brandon, because you've destroyed a lot more than just our marriage. I didn't destroy anything, I said. I just documented what was already broken. She left without another word. Tina approached my chair as the conference room emptied. How do you feel? She asked. Tired, I said honestly, and a little sick. Regrets? I thought about it. No, they made their choices. I just made sure those choices had consequences. What happens now? Now we deal with the aftermath, I said. Criminal investigations, civil lawsuits, probably congressional hearings if this gets big enough. And personally? Personally, I think I need to find a new place to live, and maybe a good lawyer. Tina nodded. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Did I? Or did I just help you get revenge on people who hurt you? Does it matter? Tina asked. Either way, the truth came out. Either way, people who were breaking the law faced consequences. She was right, but I still felt like I'd been used, manipulated into doing Tina's dirty work while she kept her hands clean. What's your next move? I asked. I'm resigning from Technova, effective immediately, she said. I've already accepted a position with a crisis management firm in Chicago, helping companies deal with exactly the kind of situation we just created. Convenient. Profitable, she corrected. I've learned that there's always a market for cleaning up other people's messes. As I drove home that evening, I thought about everything that had happened. 3 weeks ago, I'd been a man whose biggest problem was a leaky truck transmission. Now I was the whistleblower who'd brought down a multi-million-dollar company and destroyed the lives of everyone around me. The house was empty when I arrived. Veronica's car was gone, and most of her personal belongings had been cleared out. She'd left divorce papers on the kitchen table, along with a note that simply said, "My lawyer will contact you." I poured myself a beer and sat on the back porch, looking out at the yard I'd spent years maintaining. Tomorrow, everything would change. The FBI would start their investigation, the media would pick up the story, Technova's clients would panic, and the company would probably collapse within months. But tonight, for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Congratulations on your victory. You've learned well. A friend. I stared at the message for a long time, then deleted it without responding. Some lessons are too expensive to celebrate.